Hi everyone, this is Nadia, this is Jake, this is Babu, this is Buddy, and this is our Sidoni. Today we're going to talk about Rings of Power Season 2. We just watched it, literally. The first 3 episodes came out.
Yeah, they came out all at once.
Yep. And I'm so curious to hear your thoughts about all 3 episodes. I will just preface that by saying I actually thought this season, at least the first 3 episodes, was an improvement overall. Are there things lacking? Yes. Are there things that could be better? Yes. But I felt like there was enough of improvement to keep me like wanting to see the rest of the season. I am invested in seeing how it turns out. Positive in comparison to this first season for me, overall average as a whole. But I will give them like a lot of credit. You could tell that they listened to the fans. You know, a lot of things that were criticized for the first season were improved upon this season. I think the problem is that they have to kind of deal with all the blah, blah from the first season. And
wait, what was that? All the what?
All the chaos from the first season, I guess.
And there was blowback. A lot of people didn't like it. A lot of the fans didn't like it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But even the storyline, they have to kind of, you know, there has to be some continuity, right? So that's like some of the sluggishness of the second season is that they're trying to keep up with the continuity, but at the same time improve upon it, which is a difficult task in itself. So I do credit them. Now, what did you think?
I thought it was really bad.
Oh, wow. Worse than first season?
I thought it was basically the same exact thing as the first season. I thought it carried on the same, like, there are some interesting moments somewhat, and there are some like beautiful moments in terms of like, I think the score, Bear McCreary does the score, and I thought it's just as beautiful as ever. I really love that. I like the kind of big epic scale, the production design. And clearly you can see they threw a lot of money into this. You can see it on screen. So it's a great looking show, but it's just so stiff and all the characters are one-dimensional and flat. The only character I really have any interest in is Elrond. That's because there's some kind of conflict there. There's something also sympathetic about him, whereas a lot of the characters just seem like they're on one track. Galadriel is a character who really just didn't take off last season.
I feel like she was one of the characters that they were definitely like, okay, this is a very unlikable character, so let's actually get these other characters to, let's hold her more accountable. And
that's what it felt like they were doing this season, because they were like, oh, people don't like her? It's like, yeah, no, she just came off as very...
Well, it's becoming more self-aware because they didn't go that way the first season, so that's why I see it as an improvement.
I mean, look, she just seems stupid and very like kind of mean in her quest and like just ignorant. And I think now it's like she's starting to pay for that, but it's also just so unsatisfying. And it just feels also like if you know anything about what's going to happen with Lord of the Rings, you know how the story's going to end with this season. You know, we've seen Lord of the Rings, or not with this season, but with the whole show. So it's like, how much can they really sustain there? Scene to scene, it's fine. It just, again, it has this kind of limp, lifeless quality, regardless of good performances and stuff. I will say the dialogue is at times quite cringy because I feel like they're trying to force this Tolkien-esque elevated fantasy tone with the way the characters talk to each other. And it comes across, it creates these very convoluted metaphors they're always using. Oh, you make me feel as if a harp had been plucked, but under a rock of stone, whereupon a dragon lay. Like, it's just, it's so like you aren't Tolkien, and I think like you should try to do something different. I do think it might be a mixture of the creators, the writers feel so indebted to the material, they want to really like dive into the nuts and bolts and the nitty gritty of it, and like show places like Numenor and stuff. But also it feels at times like, why are we even at Numenor? Like, what's the purpose of these storylines? It's just such a sluggish pace moving from scene to scene, from beat to beat. There's not a lot of momentum or character conflict. I really liked seeing Galadriel and Elrond have some conflict and butt heads. That was the most interesting part. But everything else, it just felt like it was carrying on and not moving far enough ahead in the story from last season. It's still kind of like, all right, the dwarf guy, he's mad at, him and his dad are still having problems, so we're still dealing with that. The stranger plotline is just the same as ever. He's just wandering and encountering like mini game obstacles. You feel like they're spinning their tires waiting for a moment to hit. Just like in the first season, it felt like they were waiting for the moment, the Sauron reveal. Speaking of Sauron, they're trying to like humanize him in a way almost. They're trying to give him some kind of dimension, but it is so ineffective because ultimately Sauron, he just comes across as a mustache twirling bad guy villain. And I feel like why don't you play into that like ultimate evil Celebrimbor, Sauron, there's more interesting stuff going on in general, but kind of unsatisfying. And it also feels like Sauron has this fast travel speed that none of the other characters do, although it's implied Sauron's just riding on a horse. But he's moving from place to place all over the map. Okay, no problem for him. It's just like taking a plane ride. Where other characters, it's different. So if you are like a deep lover of Lord of the Rings and the lore, and you get excited seeing a Balrog for 5 seconds, like in the first season, or just like these little teases of lore that other people wouldn't catch on, like this might be a fun show. Just being in the atmosphere and the world of Middle Earth might be fun, but it feels more of like just like a tone piece of just like stuff happening, and there's very little there for just like your typical audience, I think.
Yeah, I think that there is a lot of magic system in this season, at least thus far, than there was the first season, where you get to understand like Sauron a little bit more. But you also, there's a lot of flashbacks in the first episode, and that helps you kind of understand some of the things that was questionable in the first season. It's like, why did you do this? Why is this that? You're absolutely right about like the stranger and other people. We still don't, there are still scenes that it kind of seems like
it could have been in the first season,
or it could be like shorter because it's more of the same thing. Then again, Lord of the Rings, the movies, they also have similar journey where they're just kind of passing and getting to a destination. It's just Lord of the Rings, the movies are just more interesting because there is more of a dynamic between Frodo and Sam.
Characters and conflict.
Yeah. Whereas it's not as attractive for us to, at least in my opinion, for us to kind of invest a little bit more time in the journey in itself. I really like, without getting into the spoilers, a lot of things and the complication that happens with humans and orcs. The elf father, how trying to understanding through the flashback, like actually what happened between the orcs and also Sauron. So I thought that was very interesting. But I also felt like the unnecessary scenes were greatly cut. Like first season, there was a lot of things that just kind of kept dragging on. And then you kind of ask yourself, get to the point. Whereas this season, I didn't feel like that at all. I felt like, no, that's not true. I felt like that a little bit, but not like nothing in comparison to the first season. And that's why I say, like, I do think that this season is an improvement because there was a lot less dragging feet. And I understand, I know what you mean when you say, why are we even in Numenor and everything? But I understand why they have to show that because it goes to the overarching story, because it's an ensemble of stories, ensemble of cast, and you have to tell all the stories together for it to come together at the end. That's not the problem for me. It's how well it's told, because Lord of the Rings, the movies, are also told in a similar way where there's multiple different plot lines happening just for it to all come together at the end. I thought the characters overall were more complex. Like Gadriel, I'm really glad that there's self-awareness with the show, that she's not very likable. You know, I could talk about that more in the spoilers. But yeah, it's just nice for like when you see a show kind of make fun of itself or make fun of the characters and like being able to listen to the fans. And that's why I am invested in the rest of the season, because I thought like, okay, they're listening, and maybe season 2 won't be as great as I would like it to be as a fan of Lord of the Rings, but I can appreciate that they're improving, and I see that, and that makes me root for further seasons, because I'm like, okay, they can continue to improve. So whatever criticism comes out of second season from overall fans, they'll hopefully take that into third season and so on. And that's what I can hope for, you know? I mean, a lot of times it's frustrating when shows kind of keep repeating the past mistakes. And also a lot of times shows come out and they are great the first season, but it dwindles down, or the plot lines just keep repeating itself. And I didn't feel like that. It was this. So I'd give it like a 6.5 out of 10. What would you give it?
3.5.
All right. So you would not recommend second season?
I wouldn't. I feel like if you saw the first season and you were unsatisfied, or a lot of people didn't finish it according to the statistics, then you're just going to get a lot of the same stuff. What I needed for the second season was a real push of creative energy, a real sense of these characters developing and the stakes rising. There's a little bit of that, but it's just...
But we've only watched the first 3 episodes.
But again, that's been 3.5 hours.
I understand, but there's like 8 episodes, aren't they?
There's 8 episodes, but again, it's like, how much time do you need?
eight episodes. They have to scatter. I understand what you mean, and I agree with you to a certain extent, but I think it's unfair to say it's the same stuff from the first season when we've seen all of first season and only 3 episodes of the second season.
Yeah, but I mean, we've sat through, including the first season, so many hours of the show that for me, it's not worth the investment of my time. I'm not going to watch the rest of the show.
Well, you're going to have to because I'm watching it and I need someone to watch it with.
Well, you'll tell me about it and then I'll be informed.
the way that we do with House of Dragon.
Exactly.
Where you watch it and I don't,
yeah.
and then so we'll do that with the Rings of Power.
Perfect. You can tell me what happens.
We're such a great couple.
Let's talk.
I want, before we get into spoiler, I do have, this is not about the Rings of Power, but it's just annoying with the dark scenes. I can barely see what's going on.
Yeah, I couldn't see anything during the
this show was released at 6 a.m. our time. It's like, can we release it at nighttime then? Because we're trying to watch it so that we can like see how it improved, didn't improve, whatever. And then also, we wanted to do this review for you guys. And it's like, dude, it's so freaking dark. I don't know what's going on. It's better to watch it at nighttime. So I will say that it could be a little frustrating.
I wish even like a fantasy show like this wasn't so devoted to realism and lighting.
That's just the trend that we're going towards.
That's the trend, but it's like your fantasy. Just put some like big lights in there, make it look like a big moon is out. Like, come on, like we know we're used to it. It's just it's
a
stylized.
Little too realistic for me.
I can't stand that, but that's the whole trend, and I think
that's not to the show. Right, it's just
yeah. Let's talk spoilers.
3, 2, 1. Spoilers. So
spoilers. I want to mention Celebrimbor and Sauron because that was one element that I was interested in. Just the way Sauron's manipulating, etc. Like, it's predictable. You know what's going to happen and how it's going to go down, but it's still kind of fun because you feel a sense of momentum, of inevitability, of doom. A lot of the side plots were just not giving us anything, and I think it feels like they're too afraid to do anything edgy or tough, or like. It feels like they want to have this, like, their idea of Lord of the Rings is like this light, like happy, like there's too much.
That's why I can watch it as a pregnant lady. So.
Well, I think that, but like in the Lord of the Rings series, I don't know, there's a lot of like dark villainous characters, like just going full like bad guy. Like there's a lot of the storytelling in this is just so like afraid to do anything with real conviction and state. Like I just am so, there's a lot of ambiguity about these characters' feelings without any real inner conflict. I don't know how to describe it, but like with what's her name, Galadriel, like we see that there's some conflict. We see the actor is performing and really giving it her all, and it's like, but like, what is she really feeling or thinking? The writing doesn't give us any insight into that. How does she feel? I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think it's pretty clear by the end of episode 3 what Celebrimbor is thinking, because Sauron is able to penetrate the minds of those who trust him. And so Celebrimbor is, am I your friend? Or Sauron asks that to him under false disguise. And he says yes. So he's earned Sauron has earned his trust, quote unquote. So he's able to penetrate his mind into the darkest thoughts. And darkest thoughts are like, he doesn't get enough credit as a craftsman. He shouldn't need these permissions. He's a great craftsman. And all these like egocentric ideas, they come to light. So it's pretty clear because he's willing to lie to the king about what he's actually doing. You know, it's even like that scene is funny because Sauron's like, you're willing to lie to the king? So he's like, wow, I'm better than I thought, you know? And so it was kind of funny. So I think that's pretty clear. For Galadriel, I think you're completely right about her, like the actress showing the guilt inside. But I think dialogue helps it too. But that's what I liked, because Elrond was like, why does he not trust you? What did you do wrong? It's like, no, I want to make sure I know, but I want to make sure because so that's what I mean with self-awareness that's being built up in season 2 is that she's a very frustrating character, and like in the season 1 at the end, she didn't tell them that this was Sauron and everything else, and she screwed them all over by not telling them exactly.
I know.
So Elrond is keeping her accountable, and it's like, you can't be trusted, you have to. And so she's no longer like the lead when it comes to their group of comrades. Elrond is, and that makes so much sense. And also what I liked about this season is that she started having, because she's portrayed as a Forseer in the movies and everything else. So I like that when she puts the Ring of Power, is able to see the future, because I was like so frustrated with her character. How is she supposed to be this wise person? She just seems very egotistical, not very self-aware.
And now she has this self-righteousness this season, like,
but Elrond, she's being brought down from other people.
Yeah.
And so I think it kind of levels out her character, whereas first season, everyone was praising her. Well, I guess with the exception of Numenor people, but she thought she was better than them anyway.
Yeah.
So but with having her peers criticize her and everything else, I think it's kind of bringing down her ego, as well as now that she's wearing one of the rings of power, she is able to foresee the future in a lot of sense. So I think that's where she gets her wisdom. It's not innate in her. And that's good for me to see, because I didn't understand where she is right there, how she would end up where she's supposed to be. This wise person, this beautiful, she is beautiful, but this wise person who's able to foresee, and people go to her for wisdom, and she's able to give advice, because it's kind of like a therapist who needs a therapist times 10, like who's a horrible therapist, but she's like, they're like a therapist. I felt like that. She's a person who just takes the wrong path, is probably one of the worst people to guide her people.
One thing I dislike about the show is it doesn't feel like there's any rules to the magic, or like or the world, or the traveling, or like what can happen and what can't. It feels like it's up to the writer's whims to go, well, let's use this thing from Tolkien, but if not, we don't have to, And again, there's supposed to be an air of mystery, I guess, about Tolkien's magic and his magic system, but I felt always during Lord of the Rings that there were some rules about how things work, what Gandalf can do, the extent of things, what's too hard for him to, like there's a sense of definite things that can and cannot happen. This, it feels like, well, I don't know, it's whatever the writers feel like they want to do right now. Especially regarding the stranger and his abilities. A lot of it just feels like, all right, whatever serves the scene, whatever serves the plot at this moment, we'll hold these characters off to the side until we need them in this, etc. So we'll keep the side of the show boring until it's necessary to bring them in. You feel a lot of that puppet master stuff, so nothing feels really too authentic, in my opinion. A big difference between the storytelling, because you were comparing the storytelling in this to Lord of the Rings. I was thinking about what is the difference, and I think a big difference is that Lord of the Rings at its heart is like a quest story. It's a mission. They need to destroy the ring, and all of the side plots, everything else that's going on with Aragorn and all these kingdoms, it comes down still to that quest. It's all part of the same story ultimately. And in this, what is the main thrust of the story? Who's really taking charge of the show? It doesn't feel like it's Galadriel anymore. Sauron, I guess, but he's a villain and he's not super compelling, and it still feels like a side thing. There's all these different stories and no central focus, and I think that's why it feels so baggy and loose. What are we waiting for,
Yeah, Sauron, he's... it's interesting now that we know who he is. Most people guessed who he was when he was disguising himself from the audience, but he tells the truth, but he is a deceiver, so he twists the truth in a way where it seems like he's helpful when he's not. It does seem a little bit less organized, but I wonder if that's the nature of it, because they're trying to fill in these holes, and that's why I give it a little bit of a leeway, because season 1 was not great. They are trying to fill in the gap with season 1, at the same time improve upon season 2. So because season 1 was so chaotic, in my opinion, kind of have to accept expect that in season 2 in order for them to like have the continuity going, you know?
My theory is something like they have a really strict plot outline for this entire show, and there's going to be some great moments in like the 3rd or 4th seasons that they have planned when things come together. But with a lot of plotted stories, sometimes a downside to that, sometimes you're just hanging on to stories that don't really need to be there until that moment.
That was one of your criticism with House of the Dragons.
House of the Dragons season 2, I guess, but it's just a totally different ballpark. I think that the storytelling is much different there. But yeah, there was a little bit of that in season 2, not in season 1.
No, I'm just talking about purely about season 2.
Yeah. Season 2.
So, because everybody complained about that. So, yeah. I do want to say that I do think I am pretty sure that it is Gandalf, the stranger. Probably will be revealed sometime in this season, but I think we saw Saruman this season. I mean, it's a little bit up in the air, but the hairstyle of the Saruman.
It's just so annoying.
And Gandalf, like...
You know they're teasing us. They're just doing this on purpose. Like, they just want to get social media interaction.
Well, that's the interesting part, because I do think that's one of the more unengaging plots. Gandalf's way to figure out who he is.
Well, and where are they going? It's just like, we need to figure out who you are.
No, he's trying to get his staff.
I guess.
He wants to get his staff, I think, so that he can remember who he is, because he has visions of where he's supposed to end up. So they're just trying to map it and create, like, I don't know.
But it's like that with Lord of the Rings. And again, you can kind of look at Lord of the Rings almost like a miniseries because the extended cuts are so long. It's a similar type of thing. I think it's comparable to a TV show in some ways, so that in Lord of the Rings, was there ever plots that were just entirely separate from the rest of the story like that? The Stranger?
It's not separate though, because if it is Gandalf, he's sent there to defeat Saruman.
But that's something we know outside of the text of the story. Within the world, it's just a guy showed up with these. I guess
if you're a fan of the original work, then yeah, you would know that.
That's
you know
what
why,
I mean.
How it comes in. Yeah,
it's almost together. Like a metatextual, like it's relying on our previous knowledge, which sucks. It makes it like you got to do homework.
Yeah, but how many people do you think watch the show who aren't a fan of Lord of the Rings?
But it's beyond that. I'm a fan of Lord of the Rings, but this show's dealing with deep lore that most people don't know.
Oh, I guess I know it.
Well, yeah, you're interested in that stuff, but I've not really dived into that. Anyways, I think I've said my piece. How do you feel?
I think I've said my piece as well, and let us know. I'm gonna watch the rest of the season, and so
good luck.
Let us know if it's worth us reviewing the rest of the season, or this is kind of good enough for you guys. But yeah.
Thank you for watching. We'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.